Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov, good evening. We are continuing in our Mishpat Tzedek class series, and I am in the book of Devarim today. As a reminder, we're going through all the Pesukim that are introductions, prerequisites, if we can call them, to the understanding of the laws of Sanhedrin. And so I figured that the next batch of Pesukim that we should look at are the Pesukim in the book of Devarim, Parashat Shofetim. If you have a Tanakh with you, that would be handy today. But just the Chumash, we are in chapter Ted Zayin, 16, verse 18, Yudchet. The Torah says the following: Shofetim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha lishvatecha.
Where are we reading from?
Devarim, Parashat Shoftim. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha lishvatecha. You must appoint Shoftim and Shotrim in all of your gates that Adonai gives to your tribes. V'shaftu et ha'am Mishpat Tzedek, and they must judge the people a righteous judgment. Hence the name of this class series, Mishpat Tzedek. Let's read the Pesukim, and then we'll go back and analyze them word by word, phrase by phrase. The Torah continues, Lo tateh mishpat. You should not sway judgment, in English perhaps. Lo takir panim. You should not show favoritism in judgment. V'lo tikach shochad. And you should not take shochad. Why? Ki ha-shochad ya'aver einei chachamim. Because shochad, bribery, will blind the eyes of the wise. V'yisalef divrei tzadikim. And will, for lack of a better English word, pervert the righteous words. I'm intentionally translating it that way. The Torah continues, Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. You shall surely pursue righteousness twice. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Leman tichyeh, so you may live. V'yarashta et haaretz, and you shall inherit the land. Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach, which Adonai your God gives you. So let's take apart these Pesukim, one phrase at a time. Let me just grab my Mishnah Torah. The first question I'm going to ask you, for the legal definition of Shoftim versus Shotrim. If you tell me.
Police officer versus a judge.
Okay, a police officer versus a judge. I accept. If you have a Mishneh Torah in front of you, or the laws of Sanhedrin in front of you, open up to the beginning of the laws of Sanhedrin in Rambam. If you want to find in Sefaria, click Sefaria, click Halakha. After Halakha, click Mishneh Torah, look for the book of Shofetim. Book of Shofetim, look for laws of Sanhedrin. Says Rabbeinu, mitzvah aseh shel Torah, first halakha in the laws of Sanhedrin. It's a biblical requirement in the Torah, lemanot shoftim v'shotrim b'chol medina u'medina u'v'chol pelech u'felech. There's a requirement to appoint judges and officers in every city. Medina in Hebrew today, maybe we use the word state, but in halachic context, is a city. How many states are inside of Israel? Uvchol pelech ufelech. In every region. I ain't gonna find region, but the northern division, the southern division, central region. That's how we mean felech. Shneimar, like it says, shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha. You must appoint judges and officers in all of your gates. Shofetim, elu hadayanin hakivuin bevedin. These are the judges that are, they're established, they stay in the bedin. Uvale dinin ba'im lifnehem. And the people who need judgment, they come before them. HaShoterim, elu ba'alei makel urtzua. The shoterim are those that have sticks and straps, weapons. Vehem ha'omedim, I'm reading now, there's two versions in the Rambam here. Rav Kapak has, if you look in his Rambam, a slightly different wording here. Vehem ha'omedim lifnei hadayanin. And they stand before the dayanin. Hamesabevin bashvakim. And they go around the markets, uval chanuyot, and the stores, letaken ha'sha'arim v'amidot, in order to make sure that all of the measures and scales are following the law. Ulhakot kol me'avet, and to beat everyone who breaks the law. V'chol ma'asehen al pi hadayanin, and everything they do is in accordance with the lawmakers, the judges. V'chol shiru bo irvat davar, and any time they find a criminal problem, Mevi'in oto levedin, they bring that person to the bedin, v'danin oto kefi risho. And the dayanim who are in the bedin, they judge him according to his crime. Yes?
Forgive me, you said that when they see somebody who's doing it wrong, they beat him, and then they take him to the dayanim. I'm not sure if I understood that correctly.
Good. So I'll explain. And by the way, we're going to have a shiur in the future on the job of police officers in halakha. And I give away a little bit of it now. In halakha, there are two types of dayanim. Dayanim hayoshavim, kivuim, the dayanim that sit in the bedin, and the dayanim hamisabevin, the judges that will roam the streets. Police officers, in essence, are the lowest level dayanim that we have. Because essentially, what does a police officer do? A police officer determines if what they're seeing in front of them is a crime or not. Is this person a criminal or not? I don't know how it works in other places in the world. I can tell you in the United States of America, I don't know that all police officers, and I have a lot of respect for the police. It's not, what I'm saying now is not intended to disparage law enforcement at all. Simply, there are expectations in the United States of what is expected of a law enforcement officer or not. I'm not certain, and I'm speaking lightly, I'm not certain that in this country or in many other countries, the police officer is expected to have the refinement of character, nor the leadership qualities, or the legal understanding and sophistication that a dayan has to have. In halakha, though, it's very different. A shoter essentially is an officer of the court. And to determine a crime in front of him has to know, is this a crime, is it not a crime? I'm going to put handcuffs on someone. I'm taking away their freedom. I'm going to take them to a judge. That might be tomorrow, it might be the next day. On which grounds am I taking away someone's freedom? Must be that I have some type of judgment that I make in the field. And therefore, a police officer is the field judge, if we could call him that. There are things, though, that everybody would agree, tell it to a judge. I'm just an entry-level judge. I'm not able to actually judge a problem here. I can fix the things that are within my authority to fix. I can't fix all of the problems here. And essentially, Rabbeinu Rambam is alluding to two different types of crimes. The crimes that are within the prerogative of the police officer to take care of, and the crimes that need a court. They actually need a bedin, a proper judgment, maybe witnesses, maybe all kinds of testimony, evidence, whatever else might be. So you're not wrong. You picked up on two different functions of the officer. Sometimes the officer commits field justice. Sometimes his determination is you have to tell it to a judge. So I'm taking away your freedom temporarily until we can take you in front of a bedin, and the bedin will decide what to do with you. It's a good point. I wasn't going to get that far today, but I'm glad you brought it up. Baruch Hashem, that's important. And I think perhaps, if you may, I once gave a shiur many years ago on Shavuot in my Kehillat. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky in general, but one of the things I'm lucky for, Baruch Hashem, in my Kehillat, that I get to study Torah with the people in my Kehillat. Not all rabbis have it that way. Some rabbis, their job in the Kehillat requires very little to do with teaching Torah, studying Torah. My primary occupation in my Kehillat is the teaching and learning of Torah, and therefore the people in the Kehillat, their primary interaction with me is Limud Torah. I'm very grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for that. Our flagship holiday in Kehillat Shaar HaShamayim has always been Shavuot. We started, the first holiday we ever did together as a community was Shavuot. And ever since then, Shavuot is the highlight of our calendar. The people here wait the whole year for Shavuot. People come from around the world to join us for Shavuot. It's an invitation. If you haven't yet been with us for Shavuot, maybe it's time to look into being with us for Shavuot. And one year I gave an entire class series throughout Shavuot on law and justice. And one of the classes was on police brutality in halakha, the concepts of force and the use of force and such things. And one of the things that we have to recognize is that police officers in halakha are the lowest level of dayanim. I don't mean that as they are low people. To the contrary, they're very esteemed people. They're not just people that run around with batons hitting people. They have to have a certain ability to judge. And what you're picking up on is exactly what Rabbeinu Rambam is saying, even if he's not saying it. So you have now shofatim, and you have shoterim, two different jobs. Now these two jobs are actually tied into each other, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So let's start at the top. If you recall, in the beginning of the book of Devarim, so if you flip back to the first chapter of Devarim, that we read last week. It really was 2 weeks ago. In Pasuk Tet Zayin, 16, in the first chapter of Devarim, the Torah says the following: "Vatzaveh shoftechem be'et ahi le'emor," and I commanded your judges at that time, saying, "Shamoa ben achechem ushvatetem tzedek ben ish uven achiv uven gero," that you must judge righteously between the people that come before you. So if the Torah already commanded us, ushvatetem tzedek, then what is the Torah trying to teach us now when it tells us here, later in Devarim, v'shaftu et ha'am mishpat tzedek? Clearly, this commandment is either extra, or it's coming to teach us something different entirely. Chachamim say the following in the Sifrim: "V'shaftu et ha'am mishpat tzedek," and they judge the people a righteous judgment. Ze minui hadayanim. This is not talking about judging people righteously, because that we already covered in the first chapter of Devarim. Rather, here we're saying, "V'shaftu et ha'am mishpat tzedek," you must appoint judges that judge people righteously. Shalok var ne'emar ushvatetem tzedek, it already said earlier in Devarim, and you must judge righteously. Ela mishpat tzedek ze minui hadayanim. Mishpat tzedek, therefore, is the appointment of judges, as opposed to the execution of righteous judgment. Okay, if that's true, we have to ask Chachamim, so what do the rest of the Pesukim mean? Lo tateh mishpat. You shall not sway judgment, or lo takir panim. You should not show favoritism. Chachamim shelo tomar. You should not say ish peloni naeh, ish peloni kerovi. This person is very good looking. I want them to be a leader. This person is my relative. I want them to be a leader. Lo takir panim. Do not show favoritism in appointments. By saying shelo tomar ish peloni ashir, this person is wealthy, ish peloni ani, this person is poor, meaning when you appoint people to positions, you must appoint them for righteous reasons, because they are going to judge the people righteously. So, in essence, this entire section of the Torah is not talking about the law itself, but about the lawmakers, and particularly to those people that are appointing the lawmakers. And as we've spoken about in the past, it's not new. When it comes to appointing people or giving people jobs, I don't know how much I'm allowed to share. I'm going to share with you a story. It's going to have in it some vagueness. And in the vagueness, you will understand what I'm trying to say. The Rabbanit, in an academic world, jobs work very differently than they work in other places. You apply for a job today, they let you know next week if you're accepted. In academia, year can go by, a year and a half, till the next semester, till the next group. Rabbanit she's a professor, she was working to get into a certain place. And at the end, the final round of interviews, after a year and a bit, the Rabbanit and another person who was not, I'm going to speak gently, objectively was not as qualified as the Rabbanit. Not because I'm her husband, objectively. And at that final round, when both of them interviewed, it was quite obvious who was the one who knew what they were doing and who wasn't. And then when the Rabbanit found out that she didn't get the job, and the person on the hiring committee had to tell the Rabbanit that she didn't get the job because she didn't look the right way. And then you realize quickly, wow, it could be a world in which maybe people don't only get hired because of their merits, but because of things that are entirely not important to the job that is in front of them right now. I spoke vaguely. I didn't give away any details. But here you live in a world where people can get jobs all the time because they are related to the right people, because they look a certain way, because they're wealthy enough to get the job. How many people who teach in a Jewish institution have jobs? I'm not telling you it's the greatest job in the world. How many people get promoted because of who they're related to, who might donate to the school? Or how often do you find out that a rabbi's wife is always going to be a Judaics teacher, even if there's somebody who's actually an excellent Judaics teacher, because they studied Torah, because they went to get a degree in education? But no, must be that the one who married the rabbi is most qualified to get the job. Why? What kind of qualification is that? Imagine you went to the doctor for a surgery. The doctor said, I can't make it today, but don't worry, I'm sending my wife. She's been married to me. I'm a surgeon for 25 years. Please don't send your wife to do a surgery on me. You didn't go to school for it. Or the other way around. Imagine you go to somebody and they tell you, my husband, he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's been married to me for 15 years, so you could take his word for it. That's not a qualification. How does it work? It works because, unfortunately, this is the way that the world works, and it's not new. It's very old. How many times do people get jobs because of the right religious affiliation or the wrong religious affiliation? The kind of kippah that they wear or that they don't wear. When I was living in Israel, people were taking tests for the chief rabbinate semicha exams. And at a certain point, there are people who they're very big Talmidei Chachamim. They started taking tests for dayanut, to be dayanim. And a certain individual that I knew, he took his test to be a dayan, and then I saw right after he took his test, he went a completely different career path. And I asked him, aren't you going to wait for your results? They're coming in about 6 months, 9 months. And he said, no. Only if you wear a black kippah, you're going to get your test results in 9 months. He said, I wear a knitted kippah, and so my test results will be released in about 9 or 10 years. Years. What I'm telling you now is not a joke. It's not something it's known. That's how it is. Because he wore the wrong kippah, so how in the world can you expect him to be a dayan? It's a reality that you and I live in. It's unfortunate, but that could be the case. I could also go the other way, don't think. I once almost lost the job because I came with a black hat. Baruch Hashem, the person who was interviewing was a Talmid Chacham, so he was willing to talk to me first, and then after he spoke to me, everything else was good after that. But there are people in the world that are just the way that it is. Sephardim, Ashkenazim, there are people, all kinds of things like that. You hear about a yeshiva, they don't want to accept students to the yeshiva that are too Hasidic. What does it mean? What is it, a crime? To be a Hasid, it's a crime. The other way around. I don't want to accept people to yeshiva if they're not Hasidic enough. That's how you accept people to learn Torah. It's not a normal reality, but it's a reality that exists, and it's so normal to us that we don't even fight it anymore. Just, okay, so we'll avoid that place. But that's how it works. Rabbeinu Ovadia Sefono. You guys know the Sefono? Yeah, one of my favorite Chachamim. Rabbeinu Ovadia Sefono. If you're on Sefaria or you have a Mikvot Gedolot, just do me a favor and open to the Sefono. He says the following. In Pasuk 20, Chaf, he says here, Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. You should surely pursue righteousness. Keshetiten lecha shofetim. When you appoint for yourself judges, I have too many chumashim open in front of me. Ata ha'mimane et hashoftim. You, the one who is responsible for appointing the judges, bechar ata yoter shofetei tzedek. Choose the one that is most guaranteed to judge the people righteously. אף על פי שאין בהם כל כך שאר תכסיסים הראויים לדיין. Even if it means choosing somebody who doesn't have all the other frills of being a dayan. כמו שלמות הקניין ושלמות הגוף. Maybe they're not as wealthy or prestigious as they should be. Maybe they're not as physically appealing as they should be. Kinyan, like it says, al tabet el marehu vel gevoa komato. Do not look at his height, his look, or at his height. Do you know which context that pasuk is spoken in? Okay, we'll do it together. Don't worry. If you don't know, we'll do it together. B'ezrat Hashem. For right now, let's talk about this. Let's open the book of Shemuel. Before I get to the book of Shemuel, I don't think Rabbi Yosef Zernigin is on this call, so I can embarrass him. I think I may have shared with you the story once then, but when Rabbi Yosef came to us to be the third Dayan on our Bedin, we had a period where we didn't have a third Dayan. And it was hard, because to find a Dayan who fulfilled all of our Peretz's requirements wasn't so simple. Chacham, who was able to hold their own weight in halacha, who had HaShamayim, who didn't want to take money for anything. Just today in the morning, I got a phone call. Somebody wants to convert to Judaism. They've been studying with a rabbi for a long time in another city, and it turned out the Bedin that was going to convert them priced them out of Giyu. I'll just say it like that. They priced them out of Giyu. And so they called Rabbi Moshe ben Zaken and asked Rabbi Moshe ben Zaken how much we charge at Shiviti for Giyu. And Rabbi Moshe ben Zaken said to us, we don't charge anything. What do you mean charge? Baruch Hashem, we should have the zechut to do such a thing. And just today we spoke how much the other rabbi wants, how much he was worried, how much we would want. We don't take anything from anybody ever. So you're going to find the Tamil Chacham, and you're going to find the Tzaddik, and find somebody with HaShamayim, but now you have to find somebody who's also willing to be broke. And not everybody is willing to be broke. So that was the hardest part. The hardest part was to find who is the Tamil Chacham who's going to give up on the tens of thousands of dollars that other Dayanim are going to get in the same exact situation. And it took us a long time to fill that spot until the name of Rabbi Yosef Zernigian came up. And I knew him for a while already on the phone, on the internet. I never got a chance to meet him in person. And I have a rule. I'm very old-fashioned. I don't work with anybody that I don't know face-to-face, ever. And so I made a trip to New York. And I had a few hours on the ground. He had a few hours on the ground. We met each other at some shady Chinese restaurant in Brooklyn. I would never. I'm not recommending anybody ever go eat there. I'm not telling you it's a health department inspector. We went there to sit, and I met him 5 minutes into the conversation. I texted the Rabbanit, "This is the one. We're taking him." We had a bedin plan for a few months down the road, and we got him a plane ticket. He came out to San Diego first so we could drive together to Los Angeles, and I got him a ticket. He rented a car, and at the car rental, Rabbi Yosef calls me. You have to understand, I was not impressed just with the character of Rabbi Yosef. I was not just impressed with his midot and his good nature and kindness and the care he had for Gerim. I was impressed by the amount of Torah he knew. Any question, any place, any idea, any thought, he was shooting. Until today, people in my Kehillat know that when I'm not comfortable answering something, I say, Rabbi Yosef Zernigian, here's his phone number. He's the one you should go talk to. I see some of you nodding your head because probably I told you that too. It's not usual that I refer people to other people like that, the way that I do with Rabbi Yosef. And Rabbi Yosef calls me from the car rental that he can't pick up the car. And I said, what's the problem? I paid, everything was good. He said, please talk to the agent. And the agent tells me, but they can't rent a car to somebody that age. And I said, can you give me back the phone to Yosef? I said, Yosef, how old are you? He wasn't old enough yet to rent a car. And so we had to figure out another arrangement for him. And then I realized, age doesn't matter. Brilliant Tamil Chacham, regardless of the age. And it was so funny for me that I'm sure other people would say, maybe you're not old enough, maybe you're not served enough years of the rabbinate, maybe back home. But when you see a person who has the talent, they have the capability, they have the desire, the knowledge, the power to be a dayan, take them. There's no other reason. You don't look for other excuses. You look for the right people. And Baruch Hashem, let's say today, Rabbi Yosef, he can rent a car, and he has enough rabbinic suffering under his belt that he should go straight to Gan Eden. Already he doesn't have to have any more experience in his life of suffering of being a rabbi. Let's look together in the book of Shemuel. The Christians gave us 2 Shemuel, so we're going to open the book of Shemuel Aleph. Some of you may have studied the chapter right before this with the Rabbanit. And if you've had a chance to study Tanakh with the Rabbanit, then you're very lucky. So hopefully some of this you may already know. Shemuel, in Perek Tedvav of the book of Shemuel Aleph,
Sorry, where are you in English?
Shemuel number 1,
Yeah,
chapter 15.
15. Okay, thank you.
Vayomer Shemuel el Shaul. Shemuel tell Shaul, what does he tell him? Oti shalach Adonai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who sent me to make you the king, to anoint you as the king. Ve'ata shema lekol divrei Adonai. Now you have to listen to the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. כה אמר אדוני צבאות, this is what Adonai has said, פקדתי את אשר עשה עמלק לישראל, אשר שם לו בדרך בעלותו ממצרים. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't forget what happened at the end of this last week's parasha. What Amalek did to the Jewish people when they left Egypt. אתה לך, go, והכית את עמלק, and you must destroy Amalek, ואחרמתם את כל אשר לו. And you have to destroy all that is his. You can have no compassion on him. And you must kill man and woman, child, old one, everyone. All of the animals also have no compassion. It's a very difficult halakha. But it requires the king of Israel to have no fear. The Jewish heart that hurts when he hears the command to wipe out Amalek, I'm not going to say that it's a bad thing. I'm just going to say that it's a misguided thing. If one truly understood Amalek, the danger that Amalek poses, not just to Am Yisrael, but to the world, one would rather have compassion on Am Yisrael and the world than have compassion on Amalek. But what can we do? Shaul HaMelech chooses to have compassion over Amalek. And he goes, he doesn't wipe them all out. This chapter is very famous. He keeps a few things alive. What is the first that he keeps alive? Someone who knows this chapter?
He keeps the animals.
The animals. He keeps the animals alive. What did the animals do wrong?
He keeps the king alive.
And he keeps the king Agag alive. I'm going to put aside here, there's a spin of the Mekubalim that all of Amalek at this point in time already converted to Judaism. I don't know what to do with that information inside of the context of the Mikra. So I'm asking you, if you read like Torah like a Kabbalist, you do with it what you want. I'm reading it here though, like what it says. Now here's the problem. The problem is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them to wipe out all of Amalek and their animals. Vayhi devar Adonai el Shemuel emor, verse 10, HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to Shemuel saying, Nichamti, I regret, ki himlachti et Shaul melech, that I appointed Shaul as a king. The word nicham means to regret. The word nechama, comfort, is my deepest regrets. And therefore, when you use it in that context, it becomes offering comfort. The name, therefore, nechama, comfort, really means regret. If you're named Nechama, please don't get offended. I'm just telling you that's how it's used in this context. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not saying I'm comforted that I appointed Shaul as king. Rather, I regret that I appointed Shaul as king. Kishav ma'acharai ve'devarai lo hikim, because he has turned away from me and he is not fulfilling my word. Vaychar li Shmuel ve'izak al Adonai kol halayla, and Shmuel screams to HaKadosh Baruch Hu the whole night. Vayashkem Shmuel likat Shaul baboker, and in the morning Shmuel comes towards Shaul. Vayugandi Shmuel emor, and he tells Shmuel saying, Ba Shaul ha-karmela v'hine metziv lo yad v'yiso. Okay, that's fine. Vayavo Shmuel el Shaul vayomer lo, Shaul baruch ata al Adonai hakimoti et devar Adonai. Shmuel comes to Shaul and he tells him, Shaul, blessed are you, Hashem. Blessed are you to Hashem. I have fulfilled the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whoa. Shaul HaMelech is not telling the truth. Shaul HaMelech greets Shemuel the prophet and he tells him, I have fulfilled the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm so glad we met today. Vayomer Shemuel tells him, Ume kol hatzon hazeh beoznai, v'kol habakar asher anochi shomea. So what's this voice of all the animals that I'm hearing? Shemuel doesn't know. What is Shemuel doing? No. Yeah, he's trying to approach the king respectfully. Moshe Rabbeinu, all of these parashiot you read now in the book of Shemot. Look at how much respect Moshe Rabbeinu gives Paro. Even though Paro is evil and Paro is hurting, he's insulting Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu chalak kavod malchut. A rabbi say he knew how to respect the king. Shemuel is trying to, almost reminds me, in Gan Eden when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Adam, Ayeka, where are you? Doesn't know where Adam is. But to give him a chance, to not come with accusations towards him, to let him explain himself first. ויאמר שאול, מעמלקי הביאום, we brought them from עמלק, אשר חמל העם על מיטב הצאן והבקר, למען זבוח לאדוני אלוהיך. ואת היותר החרמנו. He says, oh, those animals are the animals that we took from the Amalekim in order to offer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our God. Everybody who's a Rasha, most people who are Rashaim, when they violate the word of Hashem, they always do averot in the guise of mitzvot. Mori Harav, Harini Kapral Mishkavo, always said that nobody ever says Lashon Hara about Talmidei Chachamim. First they say, he's not a real Talmid Chacham. And then they say Lashon Hara about them. And nobody ever does averot. Every averah they do, it's some kind of mitzvah that they're doing. The religious mind has this way of twisting wrongdoings to convince themselves that really what they're doing is a mitzvah. Shaul is falling in this trap also. Vayomer Shemuel, yes.
It's like not that many people. Utilizing a wolf mentality, the things that we can do, that's our options.
So I'll record that in your name. I'm more afraid of Nadav and Avihu. Why? Because the Torah says Yikrivu Esh Zaram, but clearly it's not clear what Nadav and Avihu did wrong. I have a feeling I know what Nadav and Avihu did wrong. But okay, let's say, Rabbi Uriel, you're making problems for me. Let's say that many people in the Mikra, they justify their actions. Why in the Mikra? We do the same thing. Come Selichot time. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, it doesn't matter how you say Selichot, where I don't know, it doesn't matter. But I'm hearing myself. Chatati, Aviti, Pashati, all the Avirot I do Teshuvah for, wonderful, good for me. What about the Avirot I'm not yet willing to admit are Avirot? I'm still justifying them. I'm still Yonah b'me'ah hadaga. I'm still Yonah in the fish's stomach, trying to justify all of the things I do wrong. It's not easy. I'm not judging anybody here. The averot we know to do teshuvah for already. You don't have to worry about those averot. You do teshuvah. Yeah, now keep moving. It's the averot that we're still convinced are mitzvot that always scare me the most. So he says, these are the animals we brought for the Beit HaMikdash. And Shaul hears some harsh words from Shemuel. Look in Pasuk 22. Vayomer Shemuel. Shemuel says, "Hachefetz ladonai be'olot uzvachim kishmoa be'kol Adonai." Does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want your sacrifices or your offerings more than that you should just listen to him? How many times do you tell your child to do something, and instead of doing what you tell them, they do what they think you want them to do? My dear child, if I wanted you to do that, I would have told you to do that. But I told you to do this. Why did you choose to do something I didn't ask you instead of the something that I did ask you? Chevra, we're 6 weeks away from, I'm sure scaring you. Don't be scared. I'll give you 2 months. We're 2 months away from Pesach, okay? 2 months away from Pesach. Pesach is my favorite holiday. My favorite holiday. There's no holiday in my life that I love more than Pesach. And the fact that most people are scared of Pesach scares me, because that means they didn't begin to understand Pesach. Chachamim instituted cleaning the house for Pesach the night before Pesach. That's what they write in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, in the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch. All of the sources that we have say that the night before Pesach there's a mitzvah, al bi'ur chametz. If your house is already clean the night before Pesach, then you are saying God's name in vain when you say that blessing for the search for chametz, because like me and like you know there's not one bit of chametz left in your house, and therefore don't say God's name in vain. That's one of the 10 commandments. Why am I telling you that? How many people on Pesach are going to do or not do all kinds of things that their imagination told them that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from them? I was now reading Rabbanit, I quoted it to you. I was reading with you. One of the great Ashkenazi Chachamim, the last, in 250 years ago. He was asked about the minhag of some people not to eat sugar on Pesach because maybe the sugar has flour in it. And he said, halavai, that we would eat sugar the whole Pesach. No, don't. I don't know why you're jumping on me now. People's blood sugar. I don't mean that. It says halavai that the matzah that we eat on Pesach should be as kasher as the sugar that we have. Meaning, the sugar has no problems of chametz inside of it, and yet nobody wants to eat it. The matzah, which is the only thing on Pesach you eat, that actually could be chametz. People are obsessed. They only eat matzah the whole Pesach. If you really were concerned about chametz, you wouldn't eat so much matzah. You'd rather eat all the other things. You'd eat rice. Maybe it was chachamtzi. It could be. Could be chachamtzi. It could be. My heart said maybe Rav Yonatan Eibshitz, but it didn't feel right because it didn't feel right because it couldn't be that they would say the same thing. So my feeling is you're right. Halavai that it should be as kasher. Eat all the rice in the world, you still won't find chametz like the matzah that you eat for the afikoman. People do a lot of things HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't ask them, but they don't do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually does ask them. So I belabored this point. Let's continue to the end. What's the consequence?
It loses kingship.
Look at 24, Marlene, you're right? Vayomer Shaul LeShemuel. Shaul tells Shemuel, Chatati, ki amarti et pi Adonai v'devarecha. I've sinned because I violated the words of Hashem and your words. Ve'ata sana et chatati v'shuv imi v'shtachave l'Adonai. Please, come with me. Let me go ask forgiveness from HaKadosh Baruch Hu together with you. Vayomer Shemuel el Shaul, and Shemuel tells Shaul, Lo ashuv imach, I will not return with you, ki ma'asta devar Adonai, because you have despised the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm lacking a better translation of emas. Veimascha Adonai, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu has paid you the same way. Niot melech al Yisrael, and therefore He does not allow you anymore to be the king of the Jewish people. Vaisov Shemuel alechet, and Shemuel turns around to leave. Vaychazek nichnaf mi'ilo, and he grabs onto the corner of his clothing, and it's not clear who grabs onto whose corner. You can look in the commentaries here. Vaykara, and it rips. Vayomer elav Shemuel, Shemuel says, Kara Adonai et mamlechut Yisrael me'alecha hayom, untana l'reacha hatov mimeka. Just like the cloak here has ripped, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has ripped the kingdom of Israel away from you today, and He will give it to someone who is better than you. וגם נצח ישראל לא ישקר ולא ינחם. כי לא אדם הוא להנחם. ויאמר חטאתי אתה כבדני נא. He's begging him, come back with me, let me ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgiveness. וישוב שמואל אחרי שאול. וישתחו שאול לאדוני. שאול וישתחו. He bows to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. ויאמר Shemuel kills the king of Agag. And in Pasuk 34, Vayelech Shemuel haramata, Shemuel goes back to Ramah. V'Shaul ala el beito Givat Shaul, and Shaul goes to his home, his palace in Givat Shaul. V'lo yasaf Shemuel lirot et Shaul ad yom moto. And from this point on, Shemuel and Shaul never saw each other until the day of his death. Ki tabel Shemuel and Shaul, because Shemuel was mourning over Shaul. V'Adonai nicham ki imlich et Shaul al Yisrael, and Adonai, Kadosh Baruch Hu, was regretting this entire time that Shaul was the king of the Jewish people. That was the introduction to our chapter. Here begins our chapter. Vayomer Adonai el Shemuel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Shemuel, Ad matai ata mitabel el Shaul, v'ani ma'astiv mimloch al Yisrael. How long are you going to continue mourning over Shaul when I have told you I no longer want him to be the king over the Jewish people? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being impatient, kiviyachol, with Shaul. I made a choice. Just like I made him the king, I took him away from being the king. It's not your job. I've decided I don't want him to be the king anymore. Malek karnecha shemen, fill your horn with oil. Velech, and go. Eshlachecha el Yishai bet halachmi ki raiti bevanav li melech. I will send you to Bethlehem, to Bethlehem. And over there lives a man named Yishai. And I have seen in his children that one of them is fit to be a king for me. So he's now giving him a job. What is he taking oil for? What do you do with the oil?
You anoint a king.
You anoint a king. From here, HaChachamim learn the halacha that the kings of the house of David are anointed with oil. Not all the kings, Malchei Israel are not, but the kings of the house of David are anointed with oil. If you want to see some of the commentaries here, Shaul was also anointed, but the oil he was anointed from did not come from a horn, it came from a pach. Vayomer, but what does it mean? Ki raiti bevanav li melech. I saw in his children of Yishai a king for me. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu regret making Shaul the king? Because Shaul did not. He didn't obey HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, I see that in the sons of Yishai is going to be a king who will be a king for me. Not for himself, but for me. He will listen to me. Vayomer Shemuel. And Shemuel says, Ech elech, how can I go anoint another king? V'sham'a Shaul v'haragani. Shaul is going to hear that I'm going and he'll kill me. Vayomer Adonai, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Eglat bakar tikach biyadecha v'amarta lizboach l'Adonai bati. Go and take an animal with you and say, I am going in order to sacrifice an animal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At that point in time, there was no prohibition yet of offering animals wherever you wanted to offer animals. Here's something fascinating. It could be the first time you find the idea of like a shliach mitzvah. Somebody is on the way to do a mitzvah, nothing will happen to him. But on a more rational note, he's coming up with a good cover story of why he's going, where he's going. That fear you should know. That fear that Shemuel has of traveling is a fear that you find by many people. Tell me somebody else who is afraid to travel.
All I can think of is Moshe, but it's not the same.
Okay, Moshe was afraid to go to the king because he wouldn't listen to him. Not he was afraid of the king, but it's a good thought. Yonah also was afraid of his mission. He didn't want to do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him. Tell me about Yaakov Avinu.
He was afraid to go back to his homeland because of the fire.
Very good. He was afraid of the journey there. You find similarly with David HaMelech. He was running away from Shaul. You find Gad, the prophet. There are a number of places where you find people. You have Gidon, if you remember the stories of Gidon. There are a number of people that are afraid of this traveling. Okay, now what happens? וקראת לישי בזבח ואנוכי הודיעך את אשר תעשה ומשכת לי את אשר אומר אליך, and you will go to Yishai and you will appoint the son that I am telling you. ויעש שמואל את אשר דיבר אדוני. Shmuel does what HaKadosh tells him. ויבוא בית לחם, and he comes to בית לחם, ויחרדו זקני העיר לקראתו. And the elders of the city, ויחרדו. Rashi says it means they came out very quickly. Though I don't love the definition of Rashi, because what is the root of vayicherad? What's the word here? Huh? Yeah, fear, right? Chared, charad. They have fear. Why are they afraid?
They thought Shmuel was going to tell them something they were doing wrong.
Yeah, I mean, for what reason does the prophet show up in your town unless the prophet is coming to release some divine message to you about what you're doing wrong? The people were afraid. That's right, exactly like that. The Radak says like that. By the way, if you want to get good understanding of the Mikra, do yourself a favor, and wherever there is a Radak, don't abandon the writings of the Radak, ever, if you can. So they all come out, Vayomer Shalom Boecha, and one of them says, welcome. That one seems to be the eldest son of Yishai, according to Chachamim. Vayomer Shalom Nizboach Adonai Bati Hitkadeshu Uvatem iti bazavach Vaykadesh et Yishai v'et banav V'ikra lehem lazavach. And he says, come, I need to sacrifice, bring me the family of Yishai. Vayhi bevoram, and when they came, Vayaret Eliav, and he sees Eliav, the oldest son of Yishai. Vayomer, and he says, Ach neged Adonai meshicho. He said in his, this one must be the king, the oldest son. of Yishai, he had an impressive look. Vayomer Adonai el Shemuel, and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Shemuel, Al tabet el marehu vel gevoha komato. Do not look at his looks or at his height, ki ma'astihu, because I despise him. Ki lo asher yireh ha'adam. It's not the way that man sees. Ki ha'adam yireh l'aynaim, v'Adonai yireh l'levav. Famous words, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is different than man. Man sees with his eyes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees with his heart. Sees the heart of a person. By the way, here, seemingly we're talking about Eliyav. Our Chachamim scramble to figure out what did Eliyav possibly do wrong that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates him already. Like what is, aside he's the big brother of David. You know, pick on David in the playground. Aside from that, what did he do wrong? Chachamim have all kinds of things. Eliyav was angry, got upset, all kinds of different things that you see here. But perhaps I can tell you, Radak says something different. That really this was Shemuel HaMelech's, Shemuel HaNavi's last thought to protect Shaul HaMelech. He's thinking, this is who you're going to replace Mashiach Adonai with? This one? That's who you're going to replace Shaul with? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, stop thinking about Shaul. I don't care about his looks. I don't care about his height. Remember, Shaul was head and shoulders above everyone else. I don't want him anymore. I'm going to get a different king for the Jewish people. For me, it's a little heartbreaking. Shemuel so much wants to see Shaul succeed. I'm not convinced that Shaul knows, the Rabbanit was telling me before the shiur, how much does Shaul really know how much Shemuel went to bat for him? I don't know. I'll never know. But I know that Shaul feels so heartbroken that his first appointment of king is falling so terribly. Vayikra Yishai Avinadav, they bring the next son, Va'avireu lifnei Shemuel, and they bring him in front of Shemuel. Vayomer gam bazeh lo bachar Adonai. He says, this one HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't choose either. Vayaver Yishai Shama, Vayomer gam bazeh lo bachar Adonai. Vayaver Yishai shivat banav lifnei Shemuel, and they bring Yishai, and they bring all of his sons. Vayomer Shemuel Yishai lo bachar Adonai be'ele. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want any of these. He didn't choose them. Vayomer Shemuel el Yishai. Shemuel tells Yishai, Hatamu hane'arim. Are those all your children? Is there anybody else? Vayomer od Shaar katan v'hine roeh batzon. I have another kid. He's a shepherd, you know. Did David HaMelech's parents like him? My kids were reading Harry Potter many years ago.
No,
They did not like him. There was a boy who lived under the cupboard, in the cupboard under the stairs. You know what I'm talking about? Cinderella. There was one kid that nobody wanted. There was David HaMelech. How many times in Tehillim David HaMelech says, Ki avi v'imi azavuni v'Adonai ya'asfeni. My father and my mother abandoned me, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he wanted me. He picked me. He gathered me close to him. David HaMelech always is being picked on. He never forgets that for his family. David HaMelech is the chosen one of Hashem, and in his family, he's the good for nothing. I see this a lot. I'm going to tell you the truth. No, probably shouldn't say it. I sometimes see parents shouldn't have favorites. They shouldn't. And if they do have favorites, they shouldn't tell their children who their favorites are. From who do we learn this in the Torah? Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu, a person should never show favoritism to their children. That whole story, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. But sometimes you see that parents, they have preferential treatment towards a child, not because they're deserving of it. There's something else. There's some other reason. There's a vain reason. It's another, I can't tell you that I understand it always, but you see a clear lack in judgment. Here's one child who is good, who cares for you, who wants to be, and the parents hate that child. And there's another child only making problems, they're always, but the parents always prefer that child. And sometimes parents should also pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for judgment, proper judgment. If you have a David HaMelech in your house and you don't recognize he's David HaMelech, something is way off inside of your home. Something is way off in Yishai's life that David HaMelech is the kid he's hiding from the prophet. Vaishlach ve'veu v'hu admoni im yefei enayim v'tov ro'i. David HaMelech was very good looking. Vayomer Adonai, kum mishachehu ki zehu. Get up and anoint him because this is the king. Vayikach Shemuel et keren hashemen vayimshach oto bekerev echav. And he anoints him. By the way, kum, get up. There are commentaries that say Shemuel how can you be sitting in front of this boy? This boy is the king of the Jewish people. Get up and do it. And he stands for David HaMelech. Reminds me of a story I heard once from Chacham Ovadia Yosef. I heard it from the son of Chacham Ovadia Yosef, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef. Alav Shalom passed away. Chacham Ovadia Yosef, when he was very young, was very close to a famous Ashkenazi rabbi. It was the chief rabbi of Yerushalayim for its kufa, Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank. In Israel, they call him Frank. Yeah, that was what they call him. And he would come in and out of the office of Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank a lot. Mori Harav Peretz was the rabbi of the Bet Knesset of Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank in later years, one of the minyanim there. Chacham Ovadia, once he was a young avrech, he came into the office of Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank. In the office of Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank were sitting a number of Rashi Shiva, a few Hasidic rabbis, and a delegation of big Talmidei Chachamim. And when he saw this young Chacham Ovadia come inside of the room, Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank was an old man. He stood up all the way out of honor for Chacham Ovadia Yosef. And one of the rabbis in the room asked Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank in Yiddish, in the Ashkenazi vernacular in Israel, forgive me for saying it, the derogatory word for Sephardim is Frank. And he said, why are you standing up for this Frank? Ironically, the name was also Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank. And Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank, he smiled, and he told him, don't worry, I'm standing up for him today, but one day all of you are going to have to stand up for him also. David HaMelech, nobody recognized who he was, but some people did. Shemuel HaMelech, I keep saying, Shemuel HaNavi recognized. Now what happens here? He anoints him as the king. V'titznach ruach Adonai el David mehayom ahu v'mala. And the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu shines, titzlach, I don't have a good word, is on David HaMelech from that day forward. If you want to look, I don't have a Moreh Nevuchim in front of me right now. But in the second essay of Moreh Nevuchim, if you want an exact source, just text me after the shiur. I'll send you the exact source of Moreh Nevuchim. Rabbeinu Rambam shows all the different places in Mikah where it uses a phrase like this, "V'titzlach ruach Adonai al David," where the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to somebody. The best way that I can explain it to you is when a person feels that all of a sudden they have a drive inside of them. They have a motivation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is supporting them. He's pushing them forward. That feeling that fills up a person is a tremendously powerful feeling. And that feeling is how you know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you. It's a special level that a person reaches in their life. They know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with them. And David HaMelech experiences that. Unfortunately, what happens to Shaul HaMelech when that happens to David? V'ruach Adonai sara me'im Shaul. That the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu leaves Shaul. And here, I'm reminded of something. I hope it's okay with you. I take tangents. Rabbi Yosef Messas was the chief rabbi of Tlemcen, Algeria. Later became chief rabbi of Haifa. His askara was last week. So maybe it's fitting. I didn't have a shiur last week, but I'm mentioning his name this week. Rabbi Yosef Messas has 3 volumes of Otzar HaMichtavim. They just got reprinted. I once told you a story how I couldn't find his letters and I found them at a bookstore in Muncie on the floor. I might have heard that story before. They finally reprinted these books, mamash, a month ago. In the 3rd volume, Elef Tarpat, I think 1,689. I think that's where you're going to find that letter. That one and the next letter, I think so. Rabbi Yosef Messas writes a letter to 2 chief rabbis who were fighting for the job of chief rabbi of Tzfat. One's name was Rabbi Kaplan, I don't know who he is, and one's name was Rabbi Dayan, I don't know who he is. One was an Ashkenazi candidate, one was a Sephardic candidate. And both of them were trying to get elected to be the chief rabbi of Tzfat. And they clearly were busy besmirching each other's names and reputations. And they decided that the best way to win is to send all their Lashon Hara to Rabbi Yosef Messas so he could determine who would be the best. Let the better man win. And Rabbi Yosef Messas writes a scathing letter to both of them. Each one separately, copied the other letter to each one. And he says, how long will you continue to defile the air of Eretz Yisrael with your stupid machlokot? He said, who needs rabbis that are busy defiling our land by fighting with each other like children? He said, don't you realize that we have jobs to do in this world, that we're supposed to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his people? Don't you realize that life doesn't come back to me? Don't you realize that you should be better than this? Rather fill up the world with the smoke of peace, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will accept it as an offering. He gives them on the head. One of the things he says over there, he writes to them and he says, just so you should know, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. And there never is going to be one king who reigns over in the time of the dominion of another king. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows when to give one person the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and when to take away the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from them. Don't worry. If you believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the right person will become the chief rabbi, and the other one is not destined for that position. Stop quarreling with each other. I miss the days where we had Chachamim who gave Musa to Chachamim. Desperately needed. The rest of this story is literally history. But you find here, in choosing David HaMelech, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing something completely different than choosing Shaul. By Shaul, we mentioned how he looked, we mentioned his appearance, his stature, how important he was. By David HaMelech, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, please don't look at the externalities anymore. Can't have a king anymore who looks good, but doesn't follow HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I need a king, I don't care what he looks like. But I need a king who is a servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and will serve the Jewish people faithfully. This is a lesson that Moshe Rabbeinu tried to teach us in the book of Shofatim. You can have just 5 more minutes of your time to finish the shiur in the book of Shofatim. Jump back with me there. I told you I would explain the Shoftim and Shotarim, their dependency on each other. Mori Harav always used to quote Rabbi Chaim ben Atar, the Or Chaim HaKadosh. Rabbi Chaim ben Atar used to say, there's no point of having Shofetim if you don't have Shotarim. If the judge makes judgment, but there's no one to enforce that judgment, then really the judgment is useless. Father once had a story, one day, maybe he'll tell it to you. Father once bought a piece of furniture with my mother. When they first moved to San Diego, they bought a piece of furniture at a store here. They had to ship it to them from Italy, I don't know where it came from. And it never came. And month after month after month after month after month, they we'll get it next month. We'll get it next month. We'll get it next month. At a certain point, my parents took this store after maybe a year to a small claims court, and the judge said, yes, they owe you back your money. So my father came with a letter to the company, you owe me the money. And they said, what do you want from us? We don't, that's a letter for the judge, good for you. Go get someone who's going to take the money from us. And then you realize very quickly, it doesn't matter if the judge says that you owe money, now you have to have an enforcer of the law who's going to get the money. And my father, what did he do? He stood outside of the store. And everybody who came into the store said, hey, before you go inside, just so you should know, here's a letter from the judge. Those people sold me a couch, they never delivered it. And he stood out of there after a little bit. The people from the store came, gave him his money, just get away from the front door of our store. And like that, everything happened in peace at the end of that story. But you find that you need both. You need shoftim and you need shotrim, because a perfect legal system is imperfect if there's no one to enforce the law. I heard one of the United States Supreme Court justices, I don't remember his name, he once said that the Soviet Union had the most impressive Bill of Rights than any other government in the world. It just doesn't matter what you write on a paper. It matters what you do in reality. And you find, unfortunately, that many people promise freedoms. She always quotes somebody. I don't remember all of the quotes, but the Rabbi quotes somebody. She says, when somebody said in the Soviet Union, we had the freedom of speech, just like in America. The problem was that we didn't have freedom after speech. That was the problem. And so here, you have a similar situation. You need to have shoftim and shotrim. Titen lecha, b'chol, to point over you, if these pesukim are referring to the appointing body, the Or Chaim HaKadosh says it's important to recognize that the people who appoint the lawmakers should not choose people who will not prosecute them. There's a netiyah, there's a desire among politicians that when they appoint people to certain positions, they are people that will always have their back and never get them in trouble. Or Chaim says that if you're going to appoint lawmakers, they have to be people that you are going to submit yourself to as well. That's a hard thing to do. One more thing, and then I'll leave you with extra credit. If you look here, at the Sfono in Devarim, Sfono says the following. It says, you should surely pursue righteousness so that you will inherit the land. Sfono says, Liman tichye v'yarashta, so you will live and inherit the land of Israel. Titztarech lazeh yoter ba'aretz, you will need this more in the land of Israel. Ki chesron zeh yimna ha'yerusha ba, Because if you are unable to put together a righteous legal system, you will not be able to hold on to the land of Israel. That's what the Rashi is saying as well. If you look in the Pasuk Rashi, Pasuk 20, Rashi writes, Kidai hu minui hadayanin hakesherim la'achayot et Yisrael, or shivan al matan is quoting the Sifrei again there. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this mitzvah of appointing righteous judges is enough of a reason to give new life to the Jewish people and have them inherit the land of Israel. I cannot help but wonder. Before I left the house, I was speaking a lot about the Rabbanit today. Why? Because the Rabbanit was at home before when I was preparing my shiur. So every 5 minutes I interrupted her to tell her what I was preparing inside of the shiur. So I got a lot of insight in real time when I was preparing the shiur. But the Rabbanit, I guess, was reading about all these hostage deals, and she was a little bit not happy about the state of the Jewish Union. And she said, "What do you think is going on in Am Yisrael?" And I'm not a prophet. I'm not the son of a prophet. I just told her like this: my assessment of the situation. I feel for the last, they say it's been 70 weeks. I feel for the last 70 weeks, there is no leadership in Am Yisrael. A total void of leadership. On the political spectrum for sure, even from Talmidei Chachamim. Vision, the clarity. Where are the Jewish people going? What are we doing? What are we supposed to be accomplishing? What does it mean that we want? What are we doing now? Where are we headed? I feel like nobody knows. We're just sailing forward blindly. You don't have to agree with me. That's how I feel. It's impossible for the Jewish people to reclaim their homeland without appointing and maintaining righteous leadership. Righteous. Tzedek tirdo. V'shaftu et ha'am mishpat tzedek. It's not just enough to have a legal system, a government, a prime minister, a Knesset. It's not enough. Righteous ones. Not enough to have Talmidei Chachamim and Rashei Shivot and Poskim. It's not enough. What about the righteousness of them? How could it be? How could it be? I don't know. My extra credit for you. Rashi. Closing my books. Rashi over here in Devarim. He tells you, V'salef divrei tzadikim, that shochat, bribery, money, will blind the eyes of the wise, and it will pervert the words that are righteous. Rashi makes a point to say it's not that the righteous people's words will be perverted, but rather the righteous words will be perverted. When we say righteous words, dvarim tzadikim, divrei tzadikim, what are we referring to? The Torah. The Torah. The most righteous book that we have in the world is the Torah. It's our book. Says Rashi. By the way, Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon writes the same thing. If you don't have a Chumash with Rabbi Saadia Gaon, you didn't yet learn Chumash. Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, he says, look at these words. If you ever find people that are perverting the Torah, how do they say in English? Follow the money. Follow the money. See, what do they have to gain by the perversion of the Torah? Because money can make people say the most absurd things in the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When they have some interest, it could be money, it could be power, it could be anything that is shochat, anything that is bribery. That bribery causes people, even righteous people, to be blind, and even righteous words to be perverted. I think that it's very important. When we learn Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu warns us how much of limud Torah has to be void of money. Just like I teach Torah for free, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so you teach Torah for free. HaKadosh Baruch Hu demands from judges not to be righteous, to be honorable, not to take money. Anybody, the Talmud tells us, anybody who takes money for judgment, and dino din, his judgment doesn't count. It doesn't work. You can't go pay a dayan. It doesn't work that way. It's across the board. Am Yisrael, when it wants righteousness, must ensure that there's no conflict of interests. And I think that Moshe Rabbeinu, like I told you last time, Moshe Rabbeinu's book is so clear that we forget that it's a book of prophecy. It's the greatest book of prophecy that we have. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it in the Torah. It's because we still need to hear it in the year 2025. B'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach, I hope to see you next week for the next Pesukim that we'll be doing together in the introduction of the laws of Sanhedrin. Thank you for learning with me.